Okay. Hello, my Snoopy Doopas. Hello. I wanted to make this a live, actually, but I did not have my cheat together in time. So here we are. I'm just recording this for you. I have no idea how long it's going to be. I did, forgive me if I touch my eye a lot. I did that thing where you're dropping ice into your drink and then it splashes up and coffee goes into your eye. And, well, I love to be caffeinated through any orifice I can. My eye was not intended, and this is the bad one with the metal plate in it. So, yeah, and I got that metal plate from my own little true crime scenario that happened to me. But we'll talk about that another day. Anyway, I'm having eye problems again. I'm perpetually having eye problems, but I apologize if I touch it a lot. It's gross, and I'll try to edit it out. Anyway, I missed you so much. I know the last video was strange. It was long. It was intense. There were criticisms. There were excited exclamations. There were thank yous. There were complaints. It had everything. It was everything. But let me tell you something. I feel good about making it because I have a lot to say, and I'm going to try to condense it. And I'm going to try to be careful because it's a weird subject. But thank you guys so much for just coming to my channel and supporting me. You can always click like and subscribe if you want. I hate saying that. There's got to be... We'll come up with something new and fun. But anyway, if you can, that would be cool. If you don't, it's fine. I'm not going to hold it against you. I honestly don't care. Just I'm happy for any of you who watch this channel, and I appreciate you. And I'm trying to be better at how I present myself because I'm used to doing live stand-up and speeches about things like computer stuff and nerd shit. And I'm not very fantastic at editing. I'm working on it. I'm good with music editing because full disclosure, also a musician. And I write. And when I'm writing lyrics or I'm working on projects, it is easy, I think, to do sound. But video is a whole other scenario. It's a lot. Anyway, I'm trying my best to figure out a way to do this so that I can link up the material I want you to see with me talking and have it all flow together. But we'll get there. We'll get there. It's a process. Anyway, happy post-WrestleMania, everyone. Wow, that was a doozy. For those of you who know, I'm a huge wrestling fan. And as you know, I am going to throw Vince McMahon under the bus soon and give you that video. That's the next one. But right now, I promised you that I would go over the Savannah Soto LISK questions that you sent me a long time ago. And I'm kind of glad we waited because a little bit more has come out with information regarding the Soto case in San Antonio. And it's a big, heavy topic, and there's a lot there, and I'm very excited to answer those questions, in addition to the ones that you have had since and the ones from the last video. And we're going to go through some OSINT things. We're going to do a lot in this one. We're going to do a lot. So anyway, happy post-WrestleMania is my point. And I want to start by shouting out the channel Rock Chalk. Listen, we're going to put a link to the Rock Chalk channel below, so look for that. I'll probably have it on the screen somewhere. Let me tell you something. Love that lady or ladies, the compilation, because sometimes there's two people and there's a guy named Micah in there. I think it was Micah, and he sings Jolene and he has the voice of a fucking angel. They all have voices of angels. Something about Rock's voice reminds me of like a Southern auntie or like a lady that my mom would have babysit me growing up who would tell me about the real world. Like, this is what it's like if you don't pay your taxes. Like, I really like this woman's personality. From what I could gather from what she told me, and forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, Rock. I don't even know if you'll see this. You probably won't. But she's ex-law enforcement from Kansas, and she's been covering alongside Melanie Little the missing Kansas women case with the two missing women in Kansas. And it's a complicated case. I cannot go into it. It will make my head spin. It is so much. And really, I love the way they're covering it. So Melanie's covering the legal side. She's doing all the court paperwork. She's getting the word out. And then we got Rock out there on the ground, boots on the ground. She's from the area. Now, some of you may be saying, Kat, didn't you say don't go to these people's houses? Don't be weird. Listen, this is different. She's a townie. She's from the area. She knows the area. That is her stomping ground. That's like telling me don't talk about Texas. It's where I'm from. It's like one of the few things that I can contribute for people who are not from here. So with her, she's from the area. She knows these type of people. She has worked this beat, so to speak. She is there, and she's also not going on private property. She's not bothering people in their home. She's not being intrusive. She's being very respectful. She covers everybody's name. She'll cover their voices. She makes sure that she protects every single person. She will mute her channel even when people are complaining about it just to protect her source. Let me tell you something. I understand that she was XLE. but she would be a fantastic journalist and I would listen to her. And I love that it seems like everyone on the channel smokes, including her, and I'm a smoker. So for me, it's like, I understand it's a filthy habit and you shouldn't do it. Don't do it. But it does feel like I trust her. Like, let me just say I trust her because like me, like if you don't chain smoke and shake when you're reading about some of this stuff or watching it, who are you even? I applaud you, but who are you? Like you're foreign to me. This is weird. I love listening to her. She's like a Lady Lorenzo Lamas from Renegade. If you ever watch that show, that's her. She's dope as fuck. Go follow her channel. I just love her ethical snooping, and I love that she is very careful. And Melanie loves her, and I think that you'd love her too. She dabbles in in coming up with ideas, and she does listen to the rumors and present them, but she also lets you know very clearly this is a rumor. This is something that we don't know. This is just what a local said. We don't know. Like she's very open also to learning. Like if she doesn't know something and somebody shares information with her in the chat, she's like, oh, well, that's fascinating. But she doesn't just stop there. She has someone look it up. She has the mods confirm. I love all of it. I love the methods. I love the madness. I love it. I love her. And simultaneously, I met a Snoopy bestie, a new friend in her chat, who I think is a mod. I'm not going to say her name because I don't want to put her on blast, but she's also a wrestling fan. And I don't know if she wants people to know that. But this woman that's in her chat is a wrestling fan, and me and her were discussing WrestleMania as it was happening because we didn't want to leave Rock Chalk's channel because shit was going down. And simultaneously, I found it very interesting and funny that we were basically double fisting The Rock. You know what I mean? Like we're watching The Rock on WrestleMania, and we're also watching Rock Chalk's channel. And I got this friend, I didn't even know other women who were into true crime and obsessively go into chats about cases like wrestling. And it was very nice to have someone to discuss that with. So shout outs to Rock Chalk. Go follow her channel. Also, shout outs to Sam, officially our resident genealogist, forensic genealogist, if you will. Sam, you challenged me and I love it. Sam dives very deep into familial bloodlines, if you will. The bloodline, shout out Roman Reigns. You lost, sucker, but guess what? It's fine. Cody Rhodes deserved the title. Anyway, back to the shout outs. Sam is great. Sam is thorough, and I love that. And I like how Sam will bring something up and challenge me to go look up more information. It usually opens up a new rabbit hole. So fuck you for that, because I end up spending many hours reading about these things and I get distracted very easily, Sam. But I appreciate you. Oh my gosh, what a thorough individual. And I will be using your services if you offer them, because I do think that we can all learn from each other. And if you go look in the chats, the comments, I guess not the chats, but the comments of the other videos, you'll see all kinds of folks, and I appreciate them. Now back to complaints. Let's talk complaints. Aside from that pasty evil bitch who one lady made fun of my eyebrows. I think it was her. I don't remember. I think it was her under a fake account, honestly, because she was very cruel. But let me tell you something, hun. I already know. That's why I put the picture of the dog with the thick eyebrows in the last video, because I know my eyebrows are bad. So 8 Mile style, you can't hurt me, bitch. I already know. I know they're terrible. But either way, I decided to step it up this week and go a shade lighter. I still don't have the shape right. For those of you who don't know, when I had my surgery, it messed up my eyebrow line. And in order to even it out, I made a mistake. And I put this stuff right here it's not Nair. It was like a smooth away ointment that is now illegal and I think causes cancer. But anyway, shout out to Allie. Donate to her GoFundMe. But I put it here and I scraped it off with the little wet pad. And then my eyebrows never grew back. And I'm trying my best and I'm sorry. But anyway, one of them was because of the surgery. The other was because I did that. And now they're just a mess. They're too far apart and they make me look silly. But I'm trying my best, and how dare you? But anyway, I did say I will accept criticism. So I did. I did delete your comment because I was mad at the time and I thought that was very mean. And also she said something mean about someone else that didn't deserve it. So screw you. But I want you to know people have complaints. But yeah, I also want to give shout outs to Wyatt for your patience in the emails. I am still reading up on all the information you gave me on the Daniel Robinson case, the missing hydrogeologist that Wyatt has been obsessed over and is doing incredible work at just really researching the hell out of. I'm trying to learn about black box systems and infotainment just for you, and I did not forget about you, and I will respond soon. It's just a lot, and I had no idea how much I didn't know about that stuff because I'm really into cars, but infotainment's not my specialty. And wow, what a doozy. If you don't know about the Daniel Robinson case, look it up. It is insane. We will do an episode about it. It needs attention. It really does. But I want to make sure that I am thoroughly informed. And I just applaud Wyatt for being so insistent on information online when he's trying to explain to people what the issue is and they're not getting it. He has a lot of patience and he does a very good job. We can learn from Wyatt. Now, Leanne, Emily, Haley, Kelley, our Florida boots on the ground, Snoopy Dupa, and future Jeopardy champ. I also love emailing with you, and I want to give you shout outs because all of these women are advocating for cold cases of friends, missing loved ones, persons that we're going to go over. We're going to talk about one day. And one of them started a podcast, and we're going to promote it. As soon as the next episode comes out, I'm going to promote the hell out of it. And yeah, that's all my shout outs this week. Also, clarifications. Let's do clarifications. I want to clarify. I said something in the last video that when I went back and rewatched it, maybe it was the one before that. It was the Stephen Stearns one. It was part 1. I apologize to any Disney adults that were offended that had children that go to Disney and like Disney. I'm not saying that you're creepy or weird or bad people. I'm saying that in the context of Stefan, it was weird and creepy how obsessed with Disney he was. If you are obsessed with Disney, that does not mean you are weird and creepy unless you are an adult man with no children and it's just you. Then yeah, that's kind of fucking weird. But everybody else, listen, when I'm talking about World of Warcraft being nerdy and weird, I'm not talking about it in the context of a 15-year-old or even my parents or your parents or somebody you know who goes out. I'm talking about it in the context of this guy who's really into kids and spends all his time online. And we're basically, if you will, psychoanalyzing his digital footprints. In the context of what we know about him based on the criminal complaints, it's weird. Does that mean you're weird? Does that mean you're a pedo if you like this stuff? No, we're talking about this guy. We're hating on this guy because he did some dick stuff. He did some horrific, horrendous, evil, mean, terrible things to a child, and he deserves to rot in hell. So when we see people like that and we choose to shame them, or I become a hater all of a sudden, I snap into hater mode. I ascend to my true form. I'm probably going to hate on these people, and I'm going to say whatever they like is weird, even if I like it. There have been so many cases where I'm like, this is weird, but it's something that I like too. So it's hypocritical, but listen, we're talking about it in the context of them. And when people do awful things like that, you can feel free to hate. Feel free to hate. Listen, when I'm saying be careful and be kind, I'm talking about to innocent people. And if you're sitting there going, well, Kat, he hasn't been found guilty. Listen, digital evidence is digital evidence. I saw that complaint. Fuck that guy. All right. So no, I just want to clarify. Don't think that if you like World of Warcraft or Disney, you're some pervert or super weird. No. Just them. So now let's get to the Q&As because it's taking too long. And I'm trying to also slow down and chill and take it easy because I did get one person. Oh, that was one complaint. She said that, I think I already went over this, but she said, it's hard to follow your video when I'll just highlight it and I'll put it up here. Anyway, her complaint was essentially, I think I need to be more organized. I need to give people a chance to catch up, but simultaneously, I also need to put the right information or documentation next to me when I'm discussing it. And the timing was off in the editing, and that's my fault. You're absolutely right. But at the same time, just so you understand my perspective, this isn't an argument. This is just maybe someone out there knows what I can do about this because I don't really know what to do. And I'm genuinely curious, how you would go about doing it because I don't know. But what do you like more as a viewer, I guess? Do you because I'm sitting there talking about something and I feel like if I pause and just put the document up for you to read, it's just a lot of silence. And I don't know how long it takes some people to read something. And I want you to get halfway through and be mad. But at the same time, I don't want to read to you on everything because we're adults. We can read. But simultaneously, is it better to put the link below? Should I show the documentation and not address it, but put a link in case you want to go see it? Should I pause and give people time to read, or should I read it? That's kind of where I stand on it. I'm not sure what to do about that, but I get the complaint and it is valid. And I agree with you. It is confusing. I'm just not sure what to do about it. So I'm going to get some ideas. Maybe I'll ask Melanie. I'll ask some other creators what they do about that stuff, especially because I do more of a slideshow thing. So I don't know. Anyway, this is beside the point. Let's go ahead and get to the Q&As. Okay. Because I want to address your concerns. And I think when we're done, I want to talk about some good news cases. Maybe we'll make that a whole episode. We'll see how long this is, but a lot of good news has happened in true crime. And I think that sometimes it can get overwhelming and dark. And I think that it's good to have good news. It makes you feel good. It can rejuvenate you and it can give you hope. And I don't think it's false hope. If you're being realistic about a case and we're addressing a case where there is a realistic chance a person could return or could be found. So I not only want to talk about people who are currently missing who could still be alive very much and need attention. But I also want to tell you some good stories, some stories of people who returned and are, by all accounts, okay somewhat. Obviously there's going to be scars and trauma from some of these cases, but they were returned nonetheless. They came back and they were alive. And I feel like that might give you a little bit of rejuvenation when it comes to watching this kind of content. So we'll eventually go through that too. All right. So I'm going to be a little more quiet during this because my dog is asleep and I don't want to wake him up. He gets very ornery. Anyway, it's Q&A time. So you guys had questions from the first Q&A video I did until now and a couple before about LISK and Savannah Soto. And I promised you I'd finish those. And I derailed to give the conspiracy theorists some of these hands. And I do have updates on some information that I found out about one of those psychos that we talked about in the last video. But until then, let's do the Q&As because some of you have been waiting a while and there are developments in some of the things you asked about. And in a way, it's a good thing that we waited because now there's more information and it is solidified. And I like that. Okay. We'll go most recent and then work our way back. So one of you sent me an email last night about the missing Kansas moms because I was in Rock's chat and you asked if there was any OSINT we can use. You didn't use the word OSINT. You were saying like technology, but I get what you mean. You wanted to know if there was any open source intelligence or technology available for us to kind of do a little snoopy doopa or maybe something that might be used by investigators. Is there anything like traffic cams, road cams? And yes, I was bringing that up in several chats that I was in and when just conversing over this case with other people and other creators. And let me tell you something. There are some cams. They are under oktraffic.org. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at them real quick because I want you to see what I see. Now, right here's a map of Oklahoma. And we're just going to zoom out. We're going to go up to the panhandle right up here. And I'm going to zoom in right here to the area in question. As you know, it's Boise City, Keys, all the way to Guymon. This is the area where the missing women were last seen and where there's been a lot of activity, a lot of talk. Now, how viable are these cameras? How good is the quality? Well, you can click to see yourself. There are 2 traffic cameras in Boise City at lights. There is a sensor camera that, while we can't see any pictures or any video ourselves, it is pretty constantly updated along with the temperature. And I think that that is indicative, obviously, of license plate sensors being checked. We might not have that availability, but they have it. So certainly OSBI has that. And if at any moment anybody involved in this case went through Boise City, they likely got censored. Now, if we go a little bit above that, we're going to go to the right. We're going to see in Optima, there's another sensor camera. We're going to see the National Wildlife Refuge has a camera. It's obviously very dark there right now. And that's over in Hardesty. Now, the further we go, see here in Guymon, we've got the Hardesty and the Optima. So those are the 2 there. Now, here's the thing. The other day when I was looking at these cameras, one of them did have footage airing and it stated that it was updating it. So, and I think that was the Hardesty one. Yeah, so maybe it's just because it's dark there right now, but see, it says the date that it's last updated with the time. Now, on a lot of these camera systems, the ones that are public, you can sometimes actually zoom in and control it yourself. We've talked about that in one of the OSINT freebies videos. And when we were talking about cold cases and ongoing active cases, you can, in ongoing active cases, especially for a missing person, if you want to see, are they at a specific intersection maybe that they like to stand around at? This also works if it's somebody that you're looking for who maybe panhandles or they like to, not like to, but they have a job where maybe they're on the streets quite a bit, sex work, stuff like that. And you're trying to see, are they out and about? Or maybe you have a missing teen or a teenager who might be catching a bus in a certain location and you're concerned about that and you can't get there. Or maybe you're just snoopy and nosy as shit. You can go to these traffic cams. In any city, you can type this in, and I'm going to show you a still of all the different traffic cams available. And this includes weather cams and various others. Some people will put up Twitch streams for their business, as we saw in the Brian Koberger case at the food truck. That led to a lot of speculation. That was not good, but it also gave investigators massive tips and props to the Goncalves family, the sister, who pulled that data and gave it to detectives before they even knew it existed. So with the existence of social media as it is now, it's pretty fascinating how much stuff we can get. I was looking into TikToks from Oklahoma creators in that area to see if they have any sort of camera structure set up, if they were active that day, if there was anything we could catch in the background. There are a ton of other options out there. In the Riley Strang case, you could actually go to WorldCam or EarthCam. I'll show it here. But WorldCam and EarthCam, by the way, are very popular. And then you have your city traffic cams and stuff like that. But you could go there and you could see the outside of that entire strip right up to the bar that Riley was last at. Not only was it cammed 24/7 active and live, but you could actually use it to go through the archives. They archive. There are some cameras where you can actually run them through the Wayback Machine and still get video quality. If it's super old, you're probably just going to get stills. But in the Gabby Petito case, when they were crossing through at the public park area, you could see the vehicles coming through. That's just another option that we could use. I don't know if there's anything fruitful there, but likely because those cams exist, we know that there is something there that the police can likely get or that OSBI can pull, especially when it comes to license plate sensors. So that's good to know. Now, if everything I'm saying just sounds like gibbery babble to you, go back to OSINT freebies, part 1 and part 2 that are on my channel, and I show you how to use these trail cams to your advantage when gathering open source intelligence, but also the conclusions we can draw from them. For example, the existence of these street traffic cams and knowing that there are sensors there tells us that there is a viable lead as far as what traffic was going through the area that law enforcement have access to. More details of, perhaps video of, perhaps the sensor readings with the geographical location and the time and all that. Specific things that we might be able to get or we might not. So it's very interesting to be able to put that in perspective. Now, if you are brand new to WorldCam and EarthCam, I highly encourage you to check those out in Times Square. That's one of my favorites. You can zoom in on people in some parts of the New York cams. There are cameras in places you would not expect it. There are private citizens who put them up just to archive on that site of just the horizon, the atmosphere, the land. And the amount of evidence that can be gleaned from these that is very, very important and has been important in multiple criminal cases is great. The trail cams particularly helped show a Jane Doe that's currently, they're trying to figure out her identity. I'll put that here. So yeah, I think with the missing Kansas moms, I would definitely look at trail cams, street traffic cams. World and Earth Cams creators from the area who are on TikTok, IG Reels, kind of try to hone in on that date, Twitter activity, stuff like that. Just see if there's any photos with anything weird in the background. But I do like watching the coverage because I love small town stuff. And as soon as I heard potential sovereign citizenry, I went, oh my God. And I took a break from filming earlier just to go watch Rock's channel because I was like, what is happening? It's really, really, it's just crazy. Anytime you see small town rumors, you know, you got to be wary, but you can't ignore all of them, especially when like the same guy who's besties with someone who could potentially be a POI, and it very much looks like they could based on court records, which are real records that are lawful and legal. Whenever you see that, and then you find out that one of the guys that's kind of driving around following people is also like people trying to search for the women and kind of being a little bit menacing by being present for no reason, blocking roads, things like that. Whenever you see that, you find out, hey, that guy was the sheriff, the investigator, the fucking comptroller, the ice cream man. Like he did everything in the town and he's hanging out with people who are potential sovereign citizens. You got to worry. Simultaneously, you know, when you have a lot of people telling the exact same story, you got to worry. And seen a lot of cases where that happens just in general in true crime. I'm sure you've seen the same ones where it's very obvious what's going on, but everybody hesitates out of fear to go accusing, and that's good. That's good. But we should be this trepidatious with other cases too. Although I think this woman does strike fear in the hearts of many. That's the power of a redhead, I guess. I don't know. I've always heard that they're the scariest. All my ginger friends are very sweet, but I am unreasonably fearful of this woman. She reminds me of Gemma from Sons of Anarchy. I've said it 1,000 times. I still feel that. Okay, moving on. OB, how do you find cell towers from a long time ago? This is a great question, and I'm glad you asked. I was discussing cell towers with someone the other day, and they asked me this, and I thought this would be a great question just for this. You know, they emailed me and they were talking to me about it, and one of their questions was, how do you find these cold case cell towers that I've referenced when discussing them? And I said, can I share this? They said yes. But basically, there are so many different ways to see what cell towers were available at the time. The FCC has a website where you can basically go and see what cell towers are there now. But again, I cannot stress enough the Wayback Machine. It's awesome, and you can use it for that too. Simultaneously, if you know the provider of the phone, like if you know that the person had T-Mobile at the time, you can go to the T-Mobile website and you can put that in the Wayback Machine under the cell coverage page, and you can see what the cell coverage was at the exact date and time for the area, especially if you're working on phone records. There's a case that I plan on doing a very expansive podcast or series on with family members of the missing person. And we've already discussed this in the past. We just need to get a good time for it. But it's something that I've been working on for many years, trying to get the right data out on her case, the right info. And we found records for the sister and I found records for digital evidence regarding cell phone data that led to warrants, subpoenas. We were able to find someone who was a new witness. New people were interviewed, and it all had to do with someone not really being able to comprehend or not having the right phone records, poor analysis of the phone records at the law enforcement end of it. And it was crazy that just using that Wayback tool is really what got us there. Seeing the cell coverage at the time, seeing what certain codes meant on a bill, that's important. Those are things that you can use Wayback for, but you can also take advantage of different options. For example, if you don't have the provider, if you just have the phone number, you can also do the same. You can take advantage of the FCC site through the Wayback Machine that shows you every cell tower, not just one specific company. You can look up historical cell tower data in quotations, or just cell tower data in quotations, and you can filter the results on Google to show you only results from specific dates. So you can use that tools function and you can narrow it down. Like if you're looking for historical cell data, now you would type it in like that. If you wanted to utilize those tools to whittle down the exact date and time, you would do that and then just put in quotes, cell data, cell tower data, whatever you're looking for. So you have those two options for Google. You can also put in the city, and you can put in, like if you were looking for how many cell towers are in this zip code in Houston, you would type in the zip code, and then you would put in just the word cell towers in quotes, and then you can type in PDF with a date, and you can see how many PDFs, or because a lot of data back then was put into PDF form, you could see how many PDFs or historical online data indexes are available for specific websites. Some might be still in their bin or their cache, and that'll just pop up, and then you can use that link and run it through Wayback, or you can just see if it still exists and takes you to that data. You can also utilize old cell forms. You can go to cell phone help forums for a specific carrier and or specific area, and you can literally just scroll back and archive, and you can see direct information on that. I think the most reliable way, though, especially on a cold case, especially something going back to the late 90s when Nokia phones first existed, and if you don't know about Nokia phones, let's take a break and let's honor the Nokia phone. Nokia was very good to me. When the Nokia phones were around, God bless them, you could throw this thing at a fucking wall, a brick wall, probably 100 miles an hour. You could do a fucking Nolan Ryan pitch of this phone through a glass window. You could dunk it in a lake. You could drop it in a toilet. You can smash it on anything. It doesn't matter. This phone will survive. These phones look like they belong to toddlers with the way we trash these phones. They were just trashed. You dropped them all the time. People weren't used to being able to carry around a phone that wasn't cordless. Or that was cordless. It was, well, even then, back then, cordless phones, you could only go a certain distance. Like having a phone just with you walking around the mall was a very weird thing if you were around in that time. For me, it was. I think I got my first cell phone at I think it was 2001 or 2, but my friends had them in the late 90s. I think I had one briefly in the late 90s, maybe 99 for a year. I'm pretty sure I just lost it, but it was very expensive. You had to pay for individual minutes. So I've seen a lot of people, and let's go off now. I've seen a lot of people who are kind of under the age of, I guess, 30, 35. I don't know how old they are. They look fucking young. They have great skin. And they're talking about, these cold cases in groups, whether it be Facebook or a true crime group or Reddit. And they'll say things about, it's so funny to think of. They'll say things like, oh, well, back then, she could have just used her cell to download it and go on the internet. And you have to explain to them that there wasn't internet on cell phones in 2000. It was, but you couldn't watch video on it. It would take this long to load. We had these things called ringtones, where you had to pay for them. People who say, well, they could have just, mooched off another tower because of the data. And it's no, that's not how it worked back then. Back then, you actually did have a specific tower that you kind of had to go on, and some towers were restricted. People would say, she probably used her phone all the time. No, you had to pay for rollover minutes. You paid by the minute to talk to people. It was a very strange time. The best games was Snake. My boyfriend once told me he played Snake in church, and he said his mom got mad at him for playing Snake in church. And I thought that was so funny because when you think back, it's yeah, we all got our asses beat for playing Snake in church. That was the thing you did. It was like the calculator game in middle school. I'm too old. Anyway, the point is, there are a lot of things about the 90s and the 2000s, the early 2000s, that you have to remember are culturally different. So if you're younger and you're looking into older cold cases, just kind of keep that in mind. Like, people literally had day planners, and they had things called Rolodexes where you flip it and it's got cards, it's got numbers. They didn't have all their numbers stored into something. And then one day Kelly Rowland made a video with Nelly and showed us that you can use, I believe it was like Excel spreadsheet. It was like some older version of a spreadsheet thing, and you can use that to text, which you can't. We had Blackberries. Blackberries were the thing. Now you can do anything with phones. It was very different back then. So when you're looking at digital data, it's important to know that. And on that note, I want to plug oldphonebook.com because I absolutely love it. And it's shocking to me how many people don't know this resource is there. It's amazing, especially if you're looking at cold cases. If you're looking at any case that occurred in the 90s or early 2000s, even before that, any time a phone book existed, you can go find these resources. Typically, if it was pre-90s, you can find them on university websites. Most state universities have some sort of data archive that is either news related or phone book related. You can also go to, I'll just post a whole bunch of links here. I'll show you some examples. The Library of Congress has a really good collection of phone books, but if you're looking specifically for the 90s to the early 2000s, oldphonebook.com, and you can find all kinds of stuff. I'm going to show you right now. I typed in Rex Heuermann. You can type in Israel Keys. You can put in, anybody, and you can see what their phone number was in 1995. Why is this important? Well, in the late 90s, in the mid 90s, there was a big surge in chat rooms. AOL chat, AIM, things like that were still big. People were using Yahoo Messenger, Trillian. We are going to do that 90s internet video that's coming up shortly, eventually in the next 2 weeks. And let's say 3. There are so many resources that relied on either your phone number or email address back then. And I think that there needs to be more of a discussion of what we have free and at our fingertips when it comes to cross-referencing and finding old witnesses that perhaps we couldn't find at the time. Because remember, in the 90s or early 80s, let's say the 80s, let's say you have a case in the 80s and an officer is trying to find out someone's phone number in a totally different state. They would have to call, in information and say, hey, I need this number for this state. They'd be transferred, boom, 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 right? Now, you're relying on somebody to spell that name for you. It's a literal game of telephone. So let's say they type in on their little data thing, and let's say they put in one wrong letter. Let's say they spelled Tiffany with 1 F instead of 2. That can change the results. All they needed was that one little mistake to be corrected, but they didn't know that mistake was being made at the time. There's one case that we're going to talk about one day that's going to be probably the second podcast after the first one or series. Well, I'm still trying to work that through. But there's one in particular that was very interesting to me because there was a witness that was very important to the case. She, don't ask me how I got the case records, got a ton of case records. I probably shouldn't have, but somebody gave them to me, and, they were law enforcement, and they were like, you look at this. And I'm looking at it. And what I can tell you right now is that Ellie at the time, back in the 90s, spelt a word wrong. They couldn't spell the word cuatro. They didn't know Spanish, and they spelt it wrong. So when they tried to get this specific address searched to find this witness, to ask them, what was your relationship to the suspect? They had no record of this woman existing. Now today, I can put the phone number from the call records into oldphonebook.com, and that pops up with the name of her dad. And then I can go to that and I can look and see, oh, his daughter is this name we're looking for. Past addresses, boom. Turns out they spelled cuatro wrong. You can see it in the police report. They switched up 2 letters. And because of that, they missed out on a very valuable opportunity to speak to a witness who we're still trying to find right now. She could be passed away. But that's the current state of things. And it really bothers me that, this little girl's case could have been solved. But they didn't they didn't write this one thing down right. There was a miscommunication. It's pretty surprising how many times that happens, actually. But I think that oldphonebook.com can be used for so many reasons. And if you need to verify a phone number for someone in the past, or if perhaps you need to confirm their existence, people who are looking up forensic genealogy in the sense of trying to find adoption records or anything that has to do with like an old parent, and you've got a lead of a number, that's where to go. It's the best. It is the best. Okay, so One of you messaged me after the Stefan part 1 debunking his accounts video, which, by the way, I gave up. There's no point. The police have everything. I just kind of wanted to correct the record on stuff that was out early, but you guys still had questions. You had questions about the warrantless extractions that we talked about for companies like Telegram who refuse to cooperate with certain subpoenas or warrants for data, and the loopholes that can be utilized by the FBI and Secret Service to get around that. And simultaneously, some of the things they don't tell you, like they do hand over things like passwords and specific data, especially in cases that have to do with child trafficking and cases of terrorism. So they do certainly comply within certain boundaries, despite saying that they have never given over a single byte of data. That's not true. But when we were discussing that, we were discussing the loophole. I linked an article below, which I still encourage anybody to go read. It is in the description of the Stephen Stern's video. Actually, I think it's also maybe in part 2, but either way, it's linked there. And it kind of explains more of that loophole process. But the specific question that I was asked, I have to tell you because it was very funny. Debbie was asking about the loopholes for apps like Telegram when referencing the Stearns case, and she wanted to know how the police could theoretically retain data or extract it if they couldn't for some reason get the appropriate data using their warrants. And if it's a hard process that anyone can do, not just the police. Then she asked if she suspects her partner of something, could she per se do what they do without it being complicated? As in, first of all, listen, ma'am, I see what you're doing and I love it. And also, this is a Wendy's. By the way, ladies, if you ever get caught going through his phone, just remember you are not snooping through his texts. You are administering a warrantless data extraction, which is somehow okay. But yeah, I think in reference to Stearns, basically the answer is yes, you could. I'll tell you how. Cause I'm down for it, bitch. I'm here. But in the case of Stearns, let's just talk about that. Since he gave them his phone, I'd imagine that it went something like this. Should you be given a phone and told, sure, have free reign. If there's a phone code, if it's got a lock, you go with the easiest method. For example, instead of cracking the phone or having to beg for password, you can just use the finger grease pathway is what I call it, the FGP. You literally hold a phone up to the light, you hold it sideways, and you can see the grease from our fingers. We naturally have grease in our touch, and that grease is actually required for touch screens to operate, or a synthetic form, which is in those little pins that we use on phones. Anyway, that touch screen, the oil from our fingers gets on it. You can usually see the pathway if you hold it up to the light like this, and the little punch point, aka the starting point, is going to have a very significant circle around it. Now, this is if they're using this situation on their code. If they're touching it, you're going to see those punch points, and you're going to kind of have to work with darkest to lightest. And it's a whole process, and you can look it up when it comes to fingerprint forensics and analysis. There are a lot of different, thoughts on this, but if you're just an everyday person and you're trying to crack a phone code and you want to do it physically, manually, if you will, that is how one could theoretically do it. I wouldn't encourage that, but you could. Also, this is how a lot of mentalists, you know, the people that you see on TV, mentalists and magicians who claim to be able to read your mind or know your phone codes. That's one of the ways that they do it. I know a guy from doing comedy. I've met one who was sharing some secrets with me, and that's one of the ways. And it's very interesting to me that, you know, there are actual forensic diagrams and there's methodologies on how to do simple things like that. And if you want to learn some that are technical or complicated, if you do want to go that route, boom, this is the book to get, ladies and gents. But, essentially that's how you would do it. Or if you needed to, find a more complicated method, you could learn this way, but that's the easiest, I guess, if you don't have the phone code. A lot of people who are very snoopy already know this from true crime shows, and that is one of the few things that you see on TV that it is a way that one could, you know, if they weren't a forensic digital analyst or somebody who specializes in that sort of thing and knows the complicated methods, that is one way you could get the code. But in Stefan's case, he handed it over, so no need for the technical stuff. That was already open. So for the case of Telegram and encrypted apps not satisfying those warrants, if the FBI or Secret Service wanted to gain access to the digital evidence under those apps, specifically under the guidelines of like an emergency that required the protections of children who were harmed or any loopholes discussed in that earlier video we did on this, part 1 and part 2, considering his account wasn't deleted, and we know that from the screenshots that we showed in part 1, the Telegram, the last data that showed his activity, we know that his account was not deleted or taken down right after the arrest, which would have been, or the day he handed the phone over, which would have been the 26th. That tells us that since his account wasn't closed, even if he deleted it from his phone, like he took it and dragged it and uninstalled it, all they would have to do once they're in it is they could easily go and reinstall the app. And because he didn't close his account, it would basically be like the homeostasis of had he never uninstalled it at all. Now, let's say he deleted some data from it. That's fine. The fact that he didn't completely shut down and delete his account is what's important. And we know he didn't. So likely what they did was if he did uninstall it, they reinstalled it. It's his phone's open. He's handed it to them. Boom, reinstall that app. Done. If they needed to see his passwords, they could go to like the settings on an iPhone. You could see all the saved passwords in the settings. And if it's Google or a phone that has Google Chrome, you can go to the settings and see visibly or copy paste all those passwords. And you can try those over and over again in the Telegram account. That's one potential way to do it once you reinstall it. There's also, you can go to have I been pawned, have I been breached, any of these password breaching sites, you could reuse those if you needed to theoretically. But likely, all they would need to do is reinstall. So once you get in there, you can apply any of those passwords, or you can use the saved passwords, which should reapply once you reinstall the app if you didn't delete any of the cache. So as long as you don't delete that cache or that old data history from within your phone, the password should likely work. So you can go to save passwords, see if anything pops up. If it doesn't, you can certainly try using have it been breached or go to the settings on your iPhone or your Google Chrome, pull those passwords out, try those. One of those is bound to work. Either way, once you get into his Telegram, all they really have to do theoretically, and this also works for Snapchat, by the way, which is pretty scary because some people think that goes away forever. Well, guess what? It doesn't. Once you get those, this is Snap, Telegram, WhatsApp, anything encrypted, even Facebook. If you needed to, you could simply go and you could, most of them it's in the settings, and then you go to data, and then you go to download data. That's really all you have to do. In some of them, you go to settings, and then you go to activity, and then you can go to download data. It is going to give you everything you did. If you farted, it's going to show it. If you logged out, logged in, if you took a Snapchat, if you sent it, what account you sent it to, what the contents were, all of that is available for download. You can extract it right then and there. So all they really had to do is if he had the Telegram app installed or uninstalled, open it. His account was not deleted. Go to his account settings, take the account activity section, go to data, and then they could literally export it all or download it or email it to themselves. You can do that with almost every encrypted app. The idea is you as a user have the right to all of that data. They're not going to give it over by warrant. So if he gives you the phone, then theoretically the loophole is you just go download all the data, you export it, send it to yourself. It's really pretty brilliant. And let's say, you don't trust your boyfriend and you think he's cheating on you. Maybe you could do the same. Maybe you're worried that your kids are talking to dirty birds on the internet. You want to pull a Todd Grizzly when he chased Savannah and Chase, ironically, down the road because they took the little kid for ice cream. They weren't supposed to because Savannah wanted her nails done or something. I don't remember. I think she wrecked the car. I don't fucking know. That show's nuts. Are they still in jail? Anyway, it doesn't matter. If you want to go full stalker parent and see who your kids are talking to and they have a Snap, this is how you do it. You just go download their data. Super easy. Totally open too. It's crazy. Anyway, that's pretty much how I would do it if I were you and I were being insane. Anyway. Okay, now we move on to the fun part, the LISK questions. Do we know if any of Rifkin's... Oh, this is an old one. This is one of the first ones. This was after the live I did with Melanie, where we were supposed to talk about Virginia cases and the skating rink cases, and we got derailed talking about serial killers. But that was when I showed you I think I showed you my charts, my Google Sheets of all of them. I'm insane. Anyway, do we know if any of Rifkin's cases or any of the others you and Melanie talked about... I have to go over those... could overlap with Rex's, i.e. the remaining Gilgo victims, not the 4 that were attributed to Rex, but the remaining ones. Could any of those, Rifkin, or the ones me and Melanie does a lot, could they overlap with Rex's? Did you have any other thoughts on the skate shop or Virginia killings? I remember when I got this question, I had so many thoughts. Ironically, interestingly, not ironically, stupid. Anyway, one of the Virginia cases that was thought to be involved with the the Colonial Parkway murders, was actually solved recently. And we're going to have to do a whole episode on all those Virginia ones, but I will say this. As far as Rifkin goes, no, I don't think he could be responsible, if that's what you're asking, for the remaining Gilgo victims. After looking at it, he was active from 89 to 93. So LISK, no. But in that episode, we were anticipating talking about the Virginia ones. And my point was, I think that he could be responsible for some of the Virginia ones for many reasons. First of all, And not just him, there were quite a few. Keep in mind, as far as LISK, Virginia, or any of the surrounding ones, Connecticut, there were so many active serial killers in the 80s, if we're talking about Virginia, and the 90s, if we're talking about LISK. In no particular order, aside from Rifkin, there was Robert Ben Rhodes, Israel Keyes, Robert Schulman, Arthur Shawcroft, Bitroff. Obviously, we can't discount him. The likelihood of him not leaving DNA on the washed up body parts, or them not having DNA on them leading to someone else, could be why he hasn't been charged. We don't know. They could be, in my opinion, I think one or two of them are totally separate of Rex. One of them, I don't want to speak too soon. I want to vet this first, but I think I found an old court record of one of the victims from 2000. I can't remember. I think it's Valerie Mack, but I think I found an old record that could have put her in Atlantic City and involved in a court case right before this was happening. Now, I need to make sure. But it's been really hard to vet, and by all indication, it really does seem like her. So I want to do a few more things. I might throw it on to Melanie, see what she thinks, but I'll put it up here and see what you guys think if I can't get it confirmed. But regardless, I think it's interesting. We're going to do another episode where we're definitely going to go way in depth on individual people in the case. And, I kind of want to show you why I think that Peaches and, Valerie could be kind of separate. But I know that I believe they said she was in Pennsylvania mainly was her home. But if the record that I have is correct, there is a potential that she might have spent time living in Atlantic City and been involved in a very strange court case situation involving her being a witness. And if it's her, if it is the right one, I think that could be something that could definitely lead away from Rex. But as far as others, yeah, there's quite a few. And to go through them all would be very difficult. But I will say this, as far as for the Gilgo Beach specific victims, the remaining ones, I do think, especially for the late 90s, early 2000s, obviously, we're not going to have Rifkin in there. But for the skating ones, we do have Rifkin. That is a potential possibility, especially because, and with the Route 29 stalker and with the Colonial Parkway murders, there are quite a few of these guys that do overlap at the same time Rex would have been there that we have to consider. One has been caught for one of the cases that was thought to be that, so we have to consider that. But also there are specific things about the crime scenes that have commonalities that one can't help but not overlook. You have to kind of look at them, and I want to go over some of those with you. So let's go one at a time. First of all, when we're talking about the skating park cases and the Virginia cases specifically, or any of the 80s cases that ended up in New York that we tossed in there, we have to remember that there were other people who had similarities in crime scene, if we are looking at the victim profile and dumping grounds that are very hard to ignore. For example, there's a guy called the Yonkers Rapist in 1982 who focused on a victim in or around a skating rink in Yonkers, and there was a purple stone ring involved in this case. That is very interesting, and the fact that it was right by a skating rink makes me wonder if that could be a signature and someone to look at for these cases. And this was before they took DNA. Remember, CODIS was established and starting to function between 94 and 96, I believe. So it wouldn't have been around back then. So that's something important to consider. This was the early 80s, which was when these girls were going missing. Simultaneously, you have the Route 29 stalker. You got the Colonial Parkway murderer. They're both in the 80s, when these girls would have gone missing. You've got the golf course connection with dumping grounds. In that instance, you've got, first of all, as far as that one goes, Rifkin could have totally done it. He would have been young, but he could have totally done it. He would have been totally viable. Now, what's weird is, Rifkin, I'll call it Robert Schulman, who also was alive and functioning at that time, and Rex all worked within a couple of blocks of each other at that time in Manhattan. It's 4 serial killers. It's really crazy to me that, like, at least within a decade of each other for, there was another guy. Who was it? I can't remember the other guy, but there was another one who, was around that time too, but he was a few years earlier. But it's strange because, 2 of them worked in the same building, which is crazy. All those guys, and yet we still have this connection with Rifkin and golf courses. He made it a big deal to dump victims, cut their heads off, trash bags. There were all these different methods that he used, but it was mainly the dumping ground that was important to him. Now, with some of these young girls, that's where they were found. Golf courses. Simultaneously, there was the golf connection with another case with a young kid who basically killed his neighbor potentially with a golf club in Connecticut, who got away with it. And people speculated, could he be involved in all these golf course murders? Then you had, of course, Shawcroft, who's also doing the same dumping ground areas. You've got Israel Keys, who was known to have property out there and travel the area. And, he went all the way from Vermont, New Hampshire, down to New York. He was in Pennsylvania. He was everywhere. So was Robert Ben Rhodes. As far as the LISK girls, there are so many. And because I think that they are all different people, potentially responsible for two or three of them, I mean, I'd be willing to bet that at least two of them were isolated, especially because, them being body parts and the potential of some washing up or being buried. We don't know. Peaches was a unique circumstance. I don't think Rifkin could have been involved in those based on the time they were found, but I think with Virginia, sure, potentially, why not? Now, there is one guy that I'm very interested in for some of the cases in the 80s. All of them in the 80s in that area, from Maine to New York to Jersey to even Connecticut, Pennsylvania, like basically the entire Northeast. There's a guy who goes by the name Lovie Lee Riddle. He was a gentleman who, I'm not even going to say gentleman, he was a piece of shit. He was a shitbird who basically raped, attempted to murder, and assaulted a woman who got away and was actually very active in the Maura Murray subreddits because she insisted that they need to look at this guy for more and for other cases because he was out of prison after what he did to her, and she got away. When he was put in jail, I believe he was found to be not psychotic in any way, yet he confessed without wanting anything in exchange. He stated he killed, kidnapped, raped, murdered 30 girls in the past. And then later on, I believe he denied it, but there was no proof of that. But they also didn't investigate it very well, from what I could tell. And everything that his victim states leads me to believe that they really fucked up. And this guy could actually be responsible for any of these based on a lot of things, particularly the victim profile, what he tried to do, and his criminal history is vast. He's a registered sex offender in Maine and in Florida and anywhere he goes, but those are the primary stomping grounds he had. But he was known to spend time in various places, including, everywhere in the Northeast that has women dumped. New York, Virginia, all these different places. I know that Lovie Lee Riddle, aka Louis Lee Riddle, he's got various aliases, but pretty much the same. He was born in 1947. He was older. I want to look into him more for some of this stuff. Maybe that will be a live deep dive we're going to have to do, because it really concerns me that he's repeatedly been brought up for one particular case, but he really fits so many others in that area that it's hard to believe they didn't look into him, because he definitely did horrific things. He tried to kill someone. There's just a lot about it. I'm still learning more about him. The stuff that I had was kind of outdated. I think the first time I heard about him was probably like 15 years ago, and it was literally just a list of crime cases. It was like a crime map database project. I was kind of weeding through and looking at stuff and trying to put things in order and look at patterns. And it was interesting because I kind of discounted him. And then after going back and looking through old Topics Forums posts, on Maura specifically, when I was reading hers, it went ding, ding, ding. This is something that we need to look at. I also am curious about Staten Island Jane Doe, which I've brought up a million times, Christine Belusco. Is she in any way connected to any of these cases or these people that I mentioned? Jacqueline Martorella in 1985, she was found near a golf course, and she was one of the victims who was found in a wooded area in 85, and she was found near a Burger King and in New Jersey and near a golf course. And then we have this guy, Richard Biegenwald from New Jersey, and in 82 and 83, he focused on victims who he scouted from Burger King parking lots in and around New York and New Jersey. And he also had a fond predilection to go towards woods and golf courses. Jacqueline, could that be Rifkin? Could that be Biegenwald? There are so many different killers who focused on New York and New Jersey. They were willing to decapitate. They would take advantage sexually. They would kill. They would torture. They would dump in similar ways. And they focused on things like golf courses and very specific parking lots of restaurants. They drove similar vehicles. They had similar MOs, there were so many between the early 80s and the mid 2000s. I am still working on that database, but it's really something with the Virginia cases you'd have to go bit by bit, case by case, line by line. I think that there are a lot of potentials for those cases as far as finding who did it that I don't think are Rex. I don't think Rex did any of the Virginia ones so far, because I do know that there was DNA on a lot of them, readily available and listed in NamUs. The DNA is on hand, and NamUs is always self-scanning. They took his DNA and put it in CODIS. They didn't get hits on those. So if there's DNA on the other bodies, really, I guess that's what we could do. We need to find out, is there DNA on the remaining bodies? Because if so, even in Go-Go, Rex hasn't popped up, so it's likely not him. Now, Bitroff, I'm wondering if because he's in appeals, if they're unable to do that. We don't know. This is something we're going to have to ask Melanie, I guess. But I want you to look into Lovie Lee Riddle. He's a registered sex offender. He's got a hell of a past, and maybe we'll look into him. I think he's interesting. Okay, next LISK question. Do you trust John Ray? Oh my God. I talked about this in one video. Is that why they asked? This one I actually got through my TikTok messages. And the person followed me and unfollowed me. Rude. But yeah, I had to think about this one, because here's the thing. I don't want to let anybody down who does trust John Ray. But I just find a lot of the things that he says to be so outlandish. I mean, we got to look at all the people that he's blamed. He's blamed Peter Hackett. He's blamed Jimmy Burke. He brought that one sex worker up to do a whole press conference saying it's certainly that guy. He blamed Plant Guy at one point. He blamed the homeowner client that Shannon Gilbert had. He tied Shannon in. I'm not going to say lied about the hyoid bone, but he made presumptions and pushed for specific information on that hyoid bone to get out. That to me seemed a little bit overly deceptive and a little confusing in his analysis, his interpretation of the evidence, especially after a hurricane, for Christ's sakes, come on. But he goes consistently on TV and he holds these press conferences and he puts on his fancy outfits and he goes out there and he makes claims that very much sound car salesman-y to me. And much like I do with the TikTok psychics and the spirit box people who go, we were right. Remember this case? We were right. I go back check the data. And we see that they actually weren't right. No, you said that this person did it. You said Jack, the boyfriend, did it. And it was Brian Koberg. So you weren't right, ma'am. You're a fraud. So it's hard not to do that with people making claims in criminal cases who are attorneys. So when I see an attorney say Jimmy Burke did this, and then I hear that Rex did it, and there's DNA evidence, and then I still see this guy double down, and not only that, but say he was right, and that now Shannon is connected, but before Shannon was connected to Jimmy, so which is it? And then now he's got these witnesses who claim these things in affidavits, but we see the witnesses and their eyes are closed on the news and they're on something and they're just fucking not making any sense and saying extra shit. It just doesn't seem, I mean, you know, it could be trauma, I don't know, but it doesn't seem right that 1 minute he's got the head of the task force next to him supporting him, but then that head of the task force is making weird faces like, oh shit, dude, you need to chill. And he's making himself seem like he is a lead investigator. And I look out and I see, you know, he blamed Peter Hackett. He sued Peter Hackett. He took him to court. He called this dude the LISK. That didn't work out. He was wrong. He claims that Peter Hackett was involved in killing Shannon. There's no proof of that. Was Peter Hackett fucking weird? Yes. He's totally fucking weird. And he did that weird heart attack thing. He was just sweaty and gross and insane. But he wasn't LISK. And there's still no proof that he had anything to do with Shannon. So he was wrong about that. So that means we're 0 for 2, you know, wrong about Jimmy, wrong about Hackett. Then it was the homeowner client. The guy who lived at the house. It's no connection there. Police have yet to charge it all. There's literally nothing that they got. At some point he blamed Michael Pack. He's blamed everybody. He also said that, this guy called pizza to his house and then described what his daughter was wearing in an interview with Banfield. And he did this interview after the pizza crust was found. These claims were never brought forth before that. But he was hearkening back to a time when, you know, oh, you know what happened to me that was scary? That happened a while back when my daughter was going to college. Like, why did this story come out at the time? Why did he make the pizza connection right after the affidavit came out saying we got his DNA off pizza? It's like the Kaiser Soze scene to me in Unusual Suspects when you find out that he's just picking things around the room to describe this journey he went on that isn't real. And, yeah, it's just weird to me that he's discussing, John Ray's discussing someone calling for pizza to his house. He's telling Banfield this, who fucking loves this shit. She's just getting off like crazy because, it's bullshit and she loves bullshit. But after that, he's talking about how he was terrified and how this person was describing what his daughter was wearing and how you knew that he would have had to have been out there and been looking at you. Now, here's the thing. They traced Rex's digital footprints. And I would think that if he was menacing a lawyer involved in a victim's case, specifically one that was found on Gilgo, we would have seen some sort of digital connection to John Ray from Rex's phone included in that affidavit. Because think about it. When he called the sister, they included that. He was menacing the sister, right? When he made other calls to the victims themselves, that was listed. So why would John Ray not be included if it is a victim who was found on Gilgo's lawyer? Him lying about representing some of the family members and them getting on Twitter and being like, oh, hell no. That's concerning. I just have a really hard time with this because here's another thing. When he's giving that interview about the pizza, first he mistakenly references seeing something in regards to news footage from the LISK scene being played over the phone. He says that the person who called the perpetrator who called me and my wife when we were sitting down at dinner, he says that they essentially called and that there was a LISK footage playing in the background, reports on the girls. And he uses this to really freak out Banfield. At this point, she's making the puppy eyes. Her hair looks sad. And she's sitting there and she's like, oh my God. And she says, I think she says something like, we'll play it.
He spoke very weirdly, played some very strange music, made a noise, scratching noises, and then showed a clip of a reporter. Then reporting on Gilgo Beach back from 2012 and that time, and then spoke.
And he says that he saw something. He says, seeing this footage playing out, and then says it was over the phone. First of all, if you're on the phone, you're not going to see it. You're not going to see the news footage. This could be a simple slip-of-the-tongue mistake, but the way he's vividly describing and so sure of everything up until that point, to make that very extreme mistake just tells me it could be bullshit. I don't know, just my opinion. It feels like more of a stretch to keep his story together. The info on the pizza also already came out, if I didn't say that already, before the airing of the interview. Most importantly, phone records were available. And again, why didn't we see them in the affidavit? Why did he never bring this up again? It's very interesting to me that this guy keeps popping up with all this breaking information via sworn affidavits, and he goes straight to the press when he knows how precious this case is and how protected it needs to be, especially based on the shit it's been through and the hands it's been in. It also seems wholly irresponsible as an attorney for a victim to hold press conferences giving away precious evidence and to support people who are potential witnesses that have yet to be heard, I'm sure, even by a grand jury, let alone the public, to allow them to give out this information to Banfield, nonetheless, is insane. I gotta say, I have a hard time with him. So when you say, do I trust him? No. Fuck no. Sorry. I just don't. Look, it's a slippin' Jimmy, dude. It feels like too much like a mob lawyer or something. There's something going on there. It bothers me. I don't know if it's the polka dot fedora. I don't know if it's the cane and the fact that he dresses like a fucking Batman villain. I don't know, but it's definitely everything he says not adding up and being wrong. That has a lot to do with it. The convenient press conferences, trying to get really close to the case, tie himself into it, riling up the community with fear. It's just very unprofessional and weird. And, yeah, I don't know. I hope he proves me wrong. I want nothing more than for this man to be right and have valuable information that could solve cases, especially Karen Vergata's, God bless her. I really want that information to be true. But unfortunately, we're relying on, witness statements that were provided by a lawyer who's frequently wrong and makes false accusations and loses court cases for those accusations. Especially against like Peter Hackett and stuff like that. we're relying on that guy to provide us really shockingly late testimony from people out of the blue that conveniently fits up with something he's been trying to prove and been unsuccessful at proving for over a decade. And everything we're seeing from them has gone silent since the day they came out with this information. I have a hard time with it. Relying on witnesses with a memory that long ago that ties in so many people. And remember, she tied Jimmy Burke. She tied all these extra people into it that we didn't hear about before at the conference. I would be shitting my pants if I were him and I had no proof of that, because that's a tall order. And if he can't prove it in any way, that discredits him. So what do we get? We get more witnesses, It feels kind of like the press conference with the sex worker he had before, who, hey, we got it. We know who did this. Like, it's a lot to have to take in, consume, and believe and buy. And I'm just not the buying what you're selling. I don't like your hat, sir. But I want him to be true and to be a hero and to be real and to be not fucking around. I want this information to be real because, maybe these women will get justice and maybe Jimmy Burke will stop jerking off in front of the Vietnam Memorial. But I just want these women to get justice. I want to know who did it. And I feel like this guy kind of pulls away from that. If he does bring in his bullshit, it's not legit. So I hope it is. I want nothing more than to be wrong on this one. Okay, you wanted to know, another person asked about Google dorking for Rex. Have I found any more info on the victims? That court record, I don't know if that's true. We'll have to go back on that and find out, but I would Google dork Rex's height in swingers forums and anything that's a classifieds ad. I would Google dork that. And mainly because in swingers forums, they usually ask for that sort of thing. They want to know how tall you are, how much you weigh, and what you look like. I would Google dork it or just go self-scan. Go through Wayback Archive or go to old ones that he likely could have used. Craigslist, Backpage Archives, pretty much any, what's the one, US Sex Network or something. And then there's Escort Alligator. There's all these ones where they review them. The review sites, I would go find some from back in that day, just type in the date. Google dork the date you're looking for alongside Rex's height. I think he's got a very unique height, so it would be easy to Google dork that or just sift through that in forums. Swingers forums specifically. They banned Pornhub in Texas, so it's really hard for me to continue through the trapeze videos and try to see if there's any sight of him. And also, it is disturbing as fuck, and I don't like looking at nudity. I hate feet. Anyway, aside from that, it's too much of a task, and it's gross. So if you want to go through La Trapeze footage from the 90s, good luck. You might run into that, Roger, what's his name? I don't remember. Him and his wife went to the same club. Roger Stone and his wife, they put up ads in the bathroom. In the same bathroom that Rex and his wife put them up in. Ooh, gross. Okay, let's see. I also think it couldn't hurt, by the way, to reverse dork through old ads for the archives of escort reviews with their old phone numbers, maybe, and to see who responded or shared them. And anything that could be a victim of any. If you think that someone is a victim of one of these dudes who engaged in a lot of online activity or picked up women on Craigslist or Backpage, Google dorking is going to be very useful, but you need a unique characteristic. If they're a swingers couple posting ads, that's going to be great because it's going to include height and weight and things like that, as well as location. Remember when we talked about Amber Costello's ads and the whole situation going on in those forums? One of the ways we found it was using her work name, her entertainer name, if you will, or sex worker name. These are ways that I think would help with isolating ads for women that maybe you think could be a victim of Rex, and see if they were available, if their ads were available at that time. And essentially, were they around the time of others, and see if you can line it up with Rex's activity that we know now in the affidavit. I would say that would be something useful to do. Okay, we're almost done, guys. Let's talk about Savannah Soto, because this is also one of the old ones I had a lot of questions from. You guys wanted an update on this case. If you don't know about Savannah Soto, here, let me play a little bit for you so you can see what that case is all about. I talked about that one on Duty Ron's channel with Tio Carlos. He's the best. Shout out to Tio Carlos. But, yeah, if you missed out for some reason, here you go.
Our top story at 10, new insight into the murder case of Savanah Soto, Matthew Guerra, and their unborn baby, Fabien.
And today, a grand jury indicting Christopher Preciado for capital murder and the deaths of all three. His parents also indicted for their alleged roles. Investigators believe they helped cover up the murders back in December.
KENS 5 reporter Megan Reyna spoke with the district attorney earlier tonight. She joins us live outside his office. And Megan, the capital murder charge did not initially include baby Fabien.
Right. The family was unsure up until today if baby Fabien would be included in this case, but ultimately the district attorney did include him when presenting it to the grand jury earlier today. The family, of course, is relieved as they continue to mourn. At Kenwood Park, a memorial is still in place for Savannah Soto and her baby Fabien. On this Wednesday afternoon, Savannah's family gathered there with mixed emotions.
We're happy, like we said, but we're also just kind of like messed up about the whole situation.
Just hours earlier, Matthew Guerra's father and stepmother were outside the Bexar County District Attorney's office holding signs reading "Justice for Baby Fabien." Ultimately, they got the news they wanted to hear. Indictments for Christopher Preciado for capital murder, abuse of corpse, and altering, destroying, or concealing a corpse. His parents, Ramon Preciado and Mirta Romanos, were also indicted for charges related to helping Christopher get rid of the bodies.
We're going to try and expedite these cases as fast as we can.
District Attorney Joe Gonzalez says he took into account the request from the family to include baby Fabien as a victim in the capital murder charge, but he also relied on Texas law.
An unborn child is a person under the laws of Texas, and could be and should be considered as a person in terms of whether or not to add an additional count.
Gonzalez says it's still too early to say if his office will seek the death penalty for Christopher. He says his parents are facing anywhere from 2 to 20 years in prison.
Okay. So that's what happened. People got the shit doxed out of them. In this case, we talked about it in, the part 2 episode on debunking conspiracy theories. But basically what's new in this case, a couple of things happened. Shit hit the fan. Let's just say that. First of all, according to the San Antonio Express News, who's pretty on top of things, Bexar County, as of March 24th, 2024, which was just 2.5 weeks ago, a Bexar County grand jury charged Christopher Preciado, 19 years old, with capital murder of multiple persons, capital murder of a child under 10, which means he was charged with baby Fabien's death, obviously, and capital murder underlying robbery. In Texas, that is, it's all capital. He committed multiple felonies while killing multiple people. He, obviously the panel, because they're in San Antonio, they do a panel to decide on whether to indict for capital murder. It has to not just go through the prosecutor and DA. It's like a whole group of people involved in city government and the justice system deciding this. And they decided, yes, throw this shitbag under the bus. And good. May he rot. The indictment also charged Preciado with 3 counts of tampering with a human corpse, 4 counts of tampering with evidence, and 3 counts of abuse of a corpse, according to the Bexar County DAs. His father, Ramon, and his mother, Mirta Romanos, were charged with multiple counts of altering, destroying, or concealing human remains, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. This is pretty much as good of a charge as we could have expected for them, but what would have been fair and just would have been much harsher than what Ramon and Mirta got. But there are a lot of cases in Texas that leave me not surprised that they didn't get charged as well, because Mirta said it was her gun. He used her gun. We now know that. We know quite a bit more. Now, since we last spoke about this case, something else happened. There was a bond hearing. I'm sure everybody knows, if you don't, their bond, the parents, Mirta and Ramon, their bond got slashed. It got slashed almost in half, from $1.1 million to $600,000. And at the hearing, to try to get their bond lowered, the parents of the murdered victims obviously came to the hearing. One of them being the mother of Savannah Soto and the grandmother, baby Fabien, mother-in-law, if you will, prospectively one day, of Matthew Guerra, had they gotten married. So I'm going to play for you a video I want you to watch of that bond hearing, what happened at the end. If you didn't hear about this, get ready to be pissed off. I want to play that video for you real quick, and then I'm going to tell you what you're watching. So what you just saw is KSAT 12 News actively starting beef with me and pissing me off. This was the news source throughout my youth, and I am now feeling a type of way about them. Because what the fuck is this video content description? Drama broke out in the courtroom on Monday as a spectator was taken into custody during a bond reduction hearing for Ramon Preciado. Let me tell you why this pisses me off. That's not a spectator. You guys, that is the mother of Savannah Soto, the grandmother of baby Fabien. Her child and her grandchild just got murdered. Her other son was also murdered by a gang. In his case, it was by a gang, but he was murdered very young in San Antonio, just like her daughter was murdered very young in San Antonio. Overdue with a baby in her belly. And this mother goes to this bond hearing, and not only does she see the man who assisted in murdering her child, covering up the body, tampering with evidence, and hiding the murder weapon, dumping the body of her daughter and her grandchild like trash in a parking lot. She has been through a lot. And she is there, and not only does she have to watch that man get his bond cut in half, get relieved of almost $500,000, over $500,000 of bond, which is beneficial to him. She has to sit there and listen to his bitch ass complain about his mortgage and how uncomfortable jail is. Give me a fucking break. Not only does she have to sit there and see this guy get his bond cut in half, see him, I cannot believe it got reduced so much, see him complain about not having to pay rent because he's in jail. All that's paid. We're paying for that. But to see him complain about his mortgage while actively, openly stating that his family was pawning jewelry, to know that this guy's out there with gold, hoarding gold, and complaining about how jail sucks and how he needs his medicine. To see that guy complaining, getting his bail reduced, and for her to be having the worst day of her life other than the day she found out her kid was gone. If that wasn't enough, KSAT 12 says she's just a spectator. Not only that, they made her turn her shirt inside out so she couldn't support her dead child, her dead grandbaby. So not only is she going through all that, but then they choose to arrest her. They arrested the mother of Savannah at the bond hearing. And here's why they arrested her. Because that's probably your second question is, what the fuck just happened here? What just happened here? The mother of Savannah Soto was getting arrested at the bond reduction hearing for the man who helped to dump her daughter's body for his killer son. And the mother, Gloria Cordova, this is Savannah's mother, Gloria, was arrested at the courthouse in front of everyone while she's mourning at this hearing. And why did they arrest her? They arrested her for a past due payment on a warrant for a failure to stop and give information. As in, a cop said, hey, come here, what's your name, what's your ID? And she didn't. She just kept going. And they gave her a ticket for that. That warrant, by the way, turned into a warrant because, not because she didn't give a fuck. It's because she missed a payment. Likely because she was dealing with this shit. And they arrested her for that. Now, some of you might be going, well, break the law, find out. Oh, you're a prick. Because in San Antonio, when you have a warrant for missing a payment, an outstanding payment, no matter what it is, if there's a payment plan set up, the precedent, especially in light of COVID and how filled the jails are, is not to arrest you. It is to send you a letter. Just a letter. They don't even come to your house. They don't even call you. They just send you a letter to remind you. But her, they knew she was going to be there. And not only does she have to go through all that torture, she has to keep calm. She has to keep her composure, even though I know she wants to jump that barricade again and go for 2.0. If you didn't see that before, this is what happened at her son's murderer's hearing.
First at 5, family members of a murdered teenager accused of attacking the man on trial for it right in the middle of a Bexar County courtroom.
And I think she was doing a fucking good job at Savannah's keeping her cool in light of the situation. They took that opportunity, SAPD, to arrest her. All they had to do was when she walked out say, excuse me, ma'am, could you just make sure that you come over here and see about your payment? Let's set up another payment plan, or can you just go see the clerk real quick and make sure you handle that? But no, they choose to arrest her in front of everyone. It's infuriating. It wasn't a violent crime. It wasn't a drug deal. It wasn't anything big. So basically my beef with KSAT is that it wasn't a bystander arrested. The least you can do is not minimize what happened because it was egregious. It was atrocious. And I feel horrible for that woman. That's not fair. She's been through enough. They're so fucking sick. Bexar County disgusts me. So that happened. And they did get a reduced bond. Now, Chris is taking it up the ass as far as his charges, and good, rightfully so, because normally you would think that this would happen in cases like Chris's.
That is outrageous. We are outraged.
But there is plenty of precedent in San Antonio where that didn't happen. Capital murder charges were not pursued, and the highest charge in the land that should have been pursued was not. In fact, there are some egregious ones. The cold case that we're going to talk about, the video after next, is one of those cases. It's a case in which a pregnant girl, a teen girl, went missing, became a cold case. She was found tied up in a field in a way that, as she struggled, she choked herself. She was pregnant. The baby had a name. She died because she was tied up in a position that was meant to torture her. So that the harder she fought to save herself and her baby, the worse it would get for her. She was dumped in a field. She was sexually assaulted. She was beaten. She was murdered. She was tortured over many days. And the case went cold. And Lifetime made a movie about it that was highly inaccurate. It was offensive how inaccurate it was. And it painted her as some sort of homewrecker. She was a 15-year-old girl, by the way. It also put a lot of the blame. It put all the blame on the boyfriend who got her pregnant, who was an older guy. It put blame on a girl in her school, her boyfriend's ex or something, or his family. It made her family look a certain way, and it made his family look a certain way. And none of that was true. And it was totally Hollywoodized. And it's the whole case is fucked up. Anyway, they finally solved it. It got very little coverage. And the guy who did it, who murdered this girl and her baby and tortured them, not only spent less time in jail than your average fucking drug charge. This guy got out on bond. He's actively free. And I found some evidence in a case file for another cold case that implicates whoever killed this young lady that we're talking about, the pregnant tied up one. Her ropes matching another extremely insane case that is also cold. And I have yet to see anything brought up about that. We're going to talk about it in the cold case episode. I want to be very thorough with that one. I just want you to know this man tortured and murdered and raped and kidnapped a child who was pregnant with a baby, did one of the most heinous things you could do, tied her up, abandoned her, abused her, left her for dead in a field. And he's out walking free on bond. And he's out walking free on bond in a state that is supposed to give a shit about babies. In fact, they kind of make that their whole deal and purpose for everything, right? But when it comes time to actually help babies, children, women who are abused, Texas, we have the worst programs for women, be it for help, refuge, our medical issues, but simultaneously we get no justice. We have some of the most relaxed laws against abuse and rape. We have thousands of moldy rape kits across the state that have gone untested due to corruption from the DA in Austin and various other cities, where the victims whose cases got bungled ended up having to pay the court fees for the very government officials they sued who fucked up their cases. In Dallas, several cases were ruined involving sex trafficking because of a snafu where they accidentally deleted terabytes of evidence for insanely horrific cases. And nobody gets held accountable. You may have heard of the pregnant woman in Houston who was kidnapped. She was picked up off the street. She was impregnated. No one knows what happened with the baby yet. She was brutally treated and trapped in a house by a rapper, quote unquote, known as Lee Carter, who was an old guy. He was also known as Viper. He held this pregnant woman hostage. We don't know much about the baby. We know that there was another woman who was murdered on that property. This pregnant woman escaped. This man menaced her and texted her and harassed her while she was in the hospital after having escaped him. He got out on bond and then went right the fuck back. And now they're finding out that he may have held other women captive in his backyard. No one's asking about the baby. She was pregnant and now she's not. Where's this baby? Why was he allowed to contact her and yet still got bond? He harassed not just a witness, but a victim after the fact and got bond and got put right back. Because what was he doing? He was trying to contact her again. And he was doing terrible things. Lee Carter. This happened in Houston. This is another case we need to watch, just like the Brandon Coulter case we talked about. In Texas, we have in San Antonio specifically, we have the Nicole Perry case. If you want to know how it could have gone with Bexar County. And a woman named Nicole Perry was chopped up, body parts hidden, by a guy in a house who convinced his roommates, who threatened his roommates, he says, which I don't believe at all, to help hide her remains because he was annoyed by her. He found her annoying. He chopped this woman up, brutally killed her with an axe. And this guy, just like all the others, had accomplices who got a plea. All they had to do was testify. All they had to do was throw him under the bus. These people who stayed in their home with body parts, some of them were put in pots and pans. Like, they got a plea. We have a guy who shot a bunch of people, mass murder style, like went around with a gun that he shouldn't have had. A bunch of people do this. A bunch of teens do this. They all have the same fucking haircut. And they go around, and this one kid, he shot, we talked about him on Duty Round, he shot an old lady at her kid's birthday. He was a little shit, a little gangster. And this kid got a plea. I mean, the amount of kids walking around with straight up murder charges and ankle monitors who continue to do horrible things despite being on probation is insane. And the amount who get pleas is even crazier. Oh shit, the dog's up. Here we go. Oh, I got you, bub. I gotta go walkies him. We'll be back. Okay, I'm back from my doggy's walkies. He is now enjoying and imbibing a bone. Not a human bone, just a dog bone. But anyway, if you want to know how Texas values its women, look at the precedent. The precedent is not good. The precedent, apparently, that they've now set for victims' family members is atrocious, specifically in Bexar County, but in Harris too. Again, I can't keep harping enough on the Kristen Galvan case. I told you guys to look that up. Look it up. This case is disturbing. This girl is still likely out there, possibly being sex trafficked. The people who took a young girl, a girl who's 15, and trafficked her and admitted to trafficking her. A guy who a wannabe shitty rapper and his terrible mom and his girlfriend were all implicated, along with others. 11 girls were recovered from a house. Kristen was not one of them, but she was said to be there. They said she was there. They got a slap on the wrist. And this child is still gone. The mother had to hunt down her own daughter. She spends nights along with a private investigator constantly combing through Bissonnette Street physically, houses where they think she could be, other states, advertisements, escort ads. She's been featured on numerous television shows, but she can't get the cops in Houston to call her back on her missing child, who was already previously rescued from sex trafficking and lured back in. Because they brainwash you. They fuck you up. That's how they do it. They fuck your head up and they make you think that you have to come back or else they're going to harm you or your family. This guy was a Romeo pimp. And it's beyond abusing her at this point. He's manipulating her mind and she's a child and he's an adult. And he exploited her. He admitted to exploiting her. And yet she still hasn't been found. And the cops won't even call back her mother, her grieving mother, who's crying constantly. And Robin is a wonderful woman. She didn't escape from her mom's care either. It was from her grandmother's house and custody of her grandma. She wasn't supposed to have a phone. The day that she was given, I believe it was the day she was given her phone back, or a phone, she still managed to contact, or they managed to contact her and somehow lure her back out there. For all we know, they could have came and threatened her and grabbed her. They really aren't communicating anything with the mom. Yet the people who did it, who openly admitted to trafficking her, have yet to give up her location, any leads to where she's at, got a slap on the wrist. And the mother, I don't even believe she was allowed to talk at the sentencing. I'm going to have to talk to Robin and see if she'll come on here sometime. I've been holding out on going too detailed into a case because I'd like you to hear from Robin herself. Ideally, the end goal of this channel is to not just focus on debunking things and studying cold cases and analyzing and, maybe trying to teach you some of the stuff that I learned and am currently learning in my training, but to maybe make it a forum one day, hopefully, to where people who have been fucked over, who are families, friends, people who are going through situations that we don't always hear from their end, to have them come talk. I would love that. I have some plans with a couple of people who are family members and friends involved in and currently advocating for cases involving their missing loved ones. And we're without a doubt doing episodes with them. I'd love to get Robin on here to talk to you about Kristen. But Texas does not do well by babies, by girls, by women. It doesn't do right by them when it comes to adjudicating and holding accountable the people who harm us. Let's see. I think I gave you some rundowns of some precedent in some various cases and things that pissed me off and things that we can look at for guidance as far as information from the past. We went over the LISK stuff. The LISK Virginia stuff is very difficult because that's going to be a whole new episode, but I tried to answer as much as I could, throw some names out there. Stefan, we talked about the warrantless search loopholes and ways that if you want to extract data from your loved ones, see what they're doing, or your kids, see who they're talking to, you can download data from almost any encrypted app. They do save it for you. If you have their phone or you have a way in, or you get sneaky enough to want to use their finger grease to figure out their password and break it, that's the way to do it. That's how you do it. So I would do it. But anyway, moving on. Oh, bless you. My dog just sneezed. It was so cute. What did you just sneeze up? Something shot out of his fucking nose. That was crazy. Are you all right? Oh, he ate it. Okay, good. Great. Excellent. He ate it. He's just like his mom. Okay, so. Hey, everybody. When I first started filming this recent video for you and wrapping it up, I was in the middle of editing it to post it yesterday. And guess what happened? The bodies of the 2 Kansas women who we discussed in this video were actually found. Yes, they were found, and 4 people were booked for their murders, apparently now, because the bodies were found. And according to the mother of Jilian Kelley, one of the missing women, along with Veronica Butler, according to the mother of Jilian Kelley on Facebook, if you haven't already seen, she did announce that Jilian had passed, which is unfortunate. But the great news is they found the people who did it, and this family can move on and get closure. And it is really, really insane to me that these 4 people were operating and doing such horrific things. I'm sure we'll find out based on, look, I jumped in some of these local hometown forums on various, I was in there on Reddit, on Facebook, I was looking on Twitter, I was in the Instagrams, I was in every single local forum there was where people could talk about this. And the locals were dead ass on this. This was one of those cases where the rumors were true. It seems that they're consistently being proven true as the days go by. And if you followed Rock Chalk's channel along with me, and Melanie, you cannot, this is crazy. Like, you cannot imagine the amount of twists and turns this thing took. It was very Oklahoma of it. It was horrifying. Everything that was said by the locals, who did it, it all points to Granny, and Granny Tiff she was the one. It was her, along with her boyfriend Tad, and the Cora and Cole Twombly or Toombly. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It's spelled TWO, like 2, like the number 2. But regardless of how you pronounce it, I pronounce them fucked, because these people suck. They look like the Devil's Rejects. They look like Fleetwood Crack. They look terrible. They look absolutely terrible. They look like scary Appalachian people in the mountains trying to get you. And this is, sovereign citizenry is no joke. Crawl under a log if you're looking into that shit, because let me tell you something. You're not a sovereign citizen when you live in the United States. You do have to abide by laws, and you can't just kill people because you want custody of some kids. You can't do that. That's not how it works. You will go to jail, and you will go and not get $200. You go to get straight to jail. You're going to go all the way around the board again. You're going to go to jail. And again, I'm so glad that these women have been found. But some of the things that I showed you in the video were from before they were found. So let's go ahead and let's leave it in. I'm not going to take it out, because I do think that we can still benefit from the information as far as the EarthCam data. And you can see that even though it's a tiny, small town, even though it's like a little southern place with not a lot of people still got Ring cameras. There's still traffic cams. There's still 24/7 live feeds of trail and feed cams. Hell, deer blinds. Now they're putting Twitch streams up on deer blinds. You can go on people's face. You can go on TikTok and type in Keys, Oklahoma, and just see a ton of videos of people in Keys. So my point is, a lot of people think that cases like this are, doomed to not have a lot of OSINT or doomed to not have a lot of viable leads, places to look, technologically speaking. But the fact of the matter is a lot of people are online. A lot of Twitch streams happen from businesses in the tiniest towns. And there's a lot of cameras all over the US. I spoke to a woman from London in Rock Chalk's chat who I thought that CCTV was on every friggin' street corner. I thought that that's how it was because I watched a show on ID, that's my first mistake, was assuming that ID Network was telling me the truth. No, it does. It has some good stuff, but it was very dramatized. I don't know how to fucking say that word. The point is, it was very dramatic. And, how do you say that? Dramatized? That's a hard word to say. This is where my oblivious kicks in. Okay. The point is, there was a show on there about CCTV in Europe, and it took place in London and France, and in Europe and France, sorry. In that show, it was literally a guy with a little toggle stick, and he's just zooming in on pickpocketers and catching them. And they talk about how all over the UK there's cameras. And this woman in the chat was telling me, no, that's not how it is. It's like that in some places, but apparently not everywhere. So I started looking into intelligence capabilities over there. And it is a very CCTV heavy place. But as a citizen, your access to that CCTV is extremely limited. And here in the US, I discussed this in one video. I don't know if I went over it in depth. I'll have to go back and check. But Ring and Nest and all these camera systems that we have now, at one point in time, they were linked to, and I want to say it might have been on Duty Ron's channel. I was discussing with one of the guys in there who's ex-law enforcement. I don't remember if it was Scott or if it was the other gentleman who has two numbers in his name. I think he's like 29 or 25. Anyway, regardless, we were discussing about CCTV and, Ring footage and how they used to have a contract with law enforcement to where if you had Ring footage, legit, if you had this on your private home front door, they had contracts with the police to allow subpoenas for that footage or easy access to that footage, like immediately for a criminal investigation. And when people found out that their footage could be shared or used by law enforcement, they got pissed off. There were privacy concerns. And I do believe that Ring had to separate that from specific departments. And then eventually I think it became all of them. There were policies put in place to prevent them or allow you to opt out of that in other situations, for other companies. But that becomes a new and ongoing debate. I wish I could give you some final precedent on that, but there's a lot of things going through the courts related to that privacy fight. So we'll wait and see what happens, but it's been years. Last I checked, there were no internal contracts with Ring, but they were fighting it. So let's see what happens. But I think it's interesting that, here in the US, we have so much more capability to watch and monitor each other, even from home, from sitting right here. And I went into another creator's channel to talk to them about this with the Riley Strain case. And one of you saw that, I think. In fact, I remember it might have been Mosquito, bug. But I went in there to talk about that because I wanted people to know that, a lot of people feel like I can't do anything. I'm just sitting here at home and I can't do anything. You can go through these archives of these cameras and keep in mind some are private. And if you find one, that doesn't necessarily mean law enforcement already knows about it. So if you're from a small town or a city that you have a friend or somebody that who has one of these cameras, one of these live public 24/7 world cams or Twitch streams that show their business, then let someone know if it is a potential bit of evidence that could be used in a criminal case. Because let me tell you something, they don't have all of them. They have access to them, sure, but whether or not they know that it exists is different. And that's where the public, things like that, and they're not few and far between. There are so many instances I could name where these situations came in handy. I mean, don't remind me again about the guy who found the car on Google Maps. I'll put that in here if you haven't seen that. We'll watch that right now.
For 22 years, a missing person case in Florida went unsolved until someone saw something strange on Google Earth. And Will Bojorquez on what happened next.
It's clearly visible in this Google Earth satellite photo, the outlines of a submerged car on the bottom of a retention pond in Wellington, Florida. But for more than 2 decades, the residents of the Grand Isle community had no idea it was there and the answers it unlocked in a 22-year-old missing persons case. The discovery of the white Saturn in late August was made by a local school board member who was using Google Earth to map bus routes. Police pulled the highly calcified vehicle from the lake and found the skeletal remains of William Molt inside. The 40-year-old's clothing and personal belongings were all intact. Molt was last seen on November 7, 1997 at a nightclub in Lantana, Florida. Around 9:30 p.m., he called his girlfriend to say he was heading home to Lake Worth, but he never made it home. Arthur Jacobs has lived here nearly as long as the car was submerged.
If you knew there was a car in the lake, nobody would have thought a body was in the car.
We're gonna talk more about some of this stuff in the future. We're definitely gonna dive deep into the Emily Garcia cold case. That is one that we're doing. It's happening. Okay, it's gonna be our big deep dive. If you want to do your homework now and get started on that, her family still has the website up. The same GeoCities looking, Angel Fire looking website is still up. You can see it. I'll include a link in the description. I want you to go read through that before we start it, because Emily Garcia's case is very important to me. And I think that this is one that we definitely need to discuss. And I'm shocked that the news is not already covering it. I mean, this was a big deal. Now I'm going to end with some news reports. I'm going to play us out here of good news. People returning. Kidnapped victims returning. Kidnapped victims getting away. People getting away from their captors. Because a lot of that's been happening. Victims recovered. People, kidnapped kids getting recovered and found and being alive and being able to return to their parents. That's been happening. And I think that we see so much sad shit in the news. We see so many cases where this is not what happens. Where we get horrible sad. This stuff is depressing. So few times do we get to see people get returned relatively safe. So I'm going to play us out on some of those. I think that it'll be a good pick-me-up. I think it'll give us some faith, a little bit of hope that people can be found. And I'm also going to show you 2 missing persons at the end of this who I think are still out there and can be found. And I want you to look at their cases too. Chalice Welch and Kristen Galvan, both Texas cases. I want you to read up on those. We're going to talk about those. We're going to talk to their families, hopefully. At least one of their friends and one of their families. So thank you so much. If you have any comments on these, if you have questions about these, if you want to talk about anything, just email me, obliviousbensonquestion@gmail.com. I'm here for you. obliviousbensonquestion@gmail.com. I'm here for you. If you have any questions about any of the tech or the OSINT or anything we talked about on this episode or previous ones, email me. I did start a TikTok so that I could fight with some bitch, but if you want to go on it, it's Oblivious Benson. All of them, every social media I have is going to be under that, some form of that. If you don't think it's me, message me and I'll prove it to you. All right. You have a good night. Thank you so much. And by the way, keep watching Rock Chalk's channel. Keep watching Melanie's. Go tell Booty Ron that you love him and you support him and you hope he heals up. And if Tio Carlos is back on TikTok, go tell him you love him too. Because we support them. All right. Thank you very much. God bless.
But we begin tonight with a desperate call for help from an Inkster motel. Thank you so much for joining us for 7 Action News at 11. I'm Carolyn Clifford.
And I'm Mike Duffy. The woman who made the call had been missing for years. She turned up at the Evergreen Motel on Michigan Avenue and is now reunited with family.
7 Action News reporter Ruta Ulsanaida tells us what police have found out so far.
Michigan State Police tells us the woman was in her 20s when she walked away from family and never returned. She is now in her 30s, and MSP is investigating her disappearance as a possible human trafficking incident after she was found at this motel in Inkster on Monday. To ensure her safety, MSP is not identifying her, but tells us in 2017 she left home and never returned. Her family has been looking for her ever since. On Monday, the victim's stepmother received a call.
The girl, when she called into her mother, said that she was being held against her will.
Police quickly made their way to this motel on Michigan Ave.
They described it as like a crying, kind of screaming type of noise that lured them to that specific area.
The woman was alone and physically okay, but the room was filled with drugs and a gun.
She was pretty distraught.
The missing woman was reunited with family and is currently receiving mental health help, but MSP, they will continue investigating into what exactly led her away from family and what finally led her to call for help.
Washington State teenager Ella Jones has been found unharmed, cops say. Police have confirmed to Inside Edition Digital that the 14-year-old, who had been missing since January 5th, has been found in Michigan. The Mount Vernon Police Department said it traced the use of a rideshare that Ella might have used. Investigators say they were able to identify a man the family believes is named Keith, who police say ordered the rideshare for her. Police say they found his address, too, in South Haven, Michigan. From there, police in Washington partnered with police in Michigan, who went to the property and found Ella. Ella's family was immediately contacted, and they were reportedly elated. Last week, her godmother told Inside Edition Digital,
Ella is an amazing young woman, and she has an amazing, beautiful life ahead of her, and she has a ridiculous amount of people that love her, and there's not a single thing that has happened that could happen that would ever stop everybody from loving her and accepting her and bringing her home and helping her build, the life that she deserves.
Cops say that a 30-year-old male suspect was taken into custody and is currently being held for multiple charges.
Well, Lynn and Reka, big relief after a week of worry. We saw smiles on family members' faces this afternoon. They now know 12-year-old Imani Hughes is alive. Now, this is video we captured just a couple of hours ago here outside the family's home. A host of people gathered, smiling, hugging, and singing, "He's an on-time God." This is a celebration, but the circumstances surrounding her disappearance and her being located are still under investigation. But Houston police announced this afternoon that Imani was found unharmed in Columbus, Texas. A reliable source tells KHOU 11 News Imani was found at a Shell gas station near the HEB in Columbus. Family members have been advised against speaking right now, but did tell us off camera. Thank you to everyone for sharing the story and trying to find Imani. Neighbors we spoke to also breathing a sigh of relief.
That's all I've been doing is praying for her. I can't pronounce her name, but I have been praying for her, and God knows who I was talking about.
And the family, as you can imagine, is excited, but also have more questions that they want answered. But of course, as we learn more, we'll let you know all that we find out. For now, reporting live in Missouri City, Katira Winfrey, KHOU 11 News.
Certainly a lot of questions, Katira, like how did she get there? Was she with somebody? Officials not answering those questions just yet, but she is safe. Katira, thank you.
Breaking news now. Eyewitness News has just learned a Tennessee woman who had been reported missing during a cross-country trip with her boyfriend has been found safe in California. Police say Nikki Alcaraz was found in Eureka earlier today. She was with her boyfriend, Tyler Stratton. Police confirm her boyfriend was arrested. No further information was released.
A big sigh of relief and happy ending for the family members of a senior who went missing more than 48 hours ago. Norman Gray, who also goes by the name Bill, has been found safe.
I just want to thank the city. I want to thank TPS so much for looking for our dad, actively looking for our dad. The whole city contributed to finding him. He's been found. Thank you, Toronto. Thank you, Toronto police officers, for all of your help, for everything you've done to help my family, and we are so appreciative.
Bill's daughters were heavily involved in the search process and are grateful to be reunited with their father.
You have no idea how much this means to us. Yeah. I have no idea. Thank you so much. We're so happy.
The 76-year-old senior who lives with dementia left his North York home to go for a walk Tuesday afternoon. He never returned. Toronto police launched a high-priority search, releasing surveillance footage over the last 48 hours, tracking his whereabouts from North York to Scarborough.
You've seen the distance that Bill's traveled in the last 24 hours, 48 hours, as a matter of fact. That really amps up our search measures.
Police initially set up a command post in North York in the area of Shepherd Avenue West and Torbury Road, but relocated to Scarborough near Victoria Park Avenue and Ellesmere Road after spotting Bill walking in the area of Vic Park and York Mills.
At 4:15 this afternoon, a crossing guard at the area of Carlaw and Easter spotted Bill walking in the area and flagged down a passing police car. Police were alerted to him, they attended to him and confirmed his identity and that he was in good health.
Bill was treated by emergency medical services at the scene, and they determined he was in good health, although very tired. Police say locating him was a team effort.
Several agencies that are in the area, security firms, business improvement areas, obviously crossing guards, schools, and everything that we can possibly contact in regards to a missing person was notified, and it's through those efforts that he was located by an astute crossing guard making that observation and bringing him to the attention of the police. So we cannot thank the public enough.
Police add social media played a large role in raising awareness and are also thankful to all the news outlets that covered the search.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. At Vic Park in Ellesmere, Jasmine Graywall, City News.